Hello everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel for HCW. My name is Dan, DP, Dupreezy, whatever you want to call me, that's my name. And I'm here yet again with another wrestler interview slash UK Indy Spotlight. A series of interviews that we aim to have with people, not just wrestlers, it can be anyone really, but people on the BritWres scene. I am joined by... How do I start? Jeez. I am joined by Heart and Soul. I'm joined by former Contender, qualified now. I think that's all. Something I was going to say actually, but those and many more, I'm sure, to come. Achievements and accomplishments. It's JJ Gale.
Thank you very much, Dan. It was quite the introduction.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Good. It's all good. No, it's a pleasure to be on the show. It really is.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I wasn't expecting to reply so soon on the email, but
Do it. I'm all for
it. Fantastic. So this is one of our UK Spotlight interviews in which we just have people on the BritWres scene. It works as a sort of this is your life sort of interview. So we go through chronologically as much as we can anyway, through your career, your training, like what got you into it, and all like so basically like from your starting moments to essentially where you are now. So with that in mind, the first question that we always ask our guests to come on, to your recollection, what is your first wrestling memory? So what got you into not necessarily wanting to be a wrestler, but just enjoying pro wrestling?
Okay. I feel like that's a double answer for me. Because I told this first story that I'm about to tell you on another podcast the other day. Because it's a really vivid first memory of wrestling, and it's also a really weird first memory of wrestling. So I'm about 6-7 years old. I couldn't tell you the exact age. I know when I consistently started watching wrestling, I was about 7. So I'd probably say I was sort of early 7-year-old. Flipping the channels with my brother, like you do on a day off from school and all that, just trying to find something to watch. And we're going through the sports channels, all the classics, Premier League years, the darts, whatever else is on. And then all of a sudden, we stop on WWE SmackDown. And there's a segment going on where the boogeyman is chasing, I think, memory tells me JBL. I don't know if I've made that up or whether that's who it was. Maybe Booker T. I'm trying to think back to when I first started watching who was feuding with who. But anyway, the boogeyman was chasing someone around ringside. The weirdest character maybe ever in wrestling. Worms coming out of his mouth. Just absolutely balmy. And we watch it for about 5-10 seconds, and then my older brother, he switches the channel, and I was like, whoa, no, put that back on. What was that? What was that? I need to see more of that. And he was like, no, you're too young, Jay, you can't watch this. Trying to be a protective older brother or something, I don't know. But nonetheless, I was intrigued, and then we did go back on it for a little bit, and then off again, and I kind of caught WWE SmackDown. I was like, okay, I'm gonna look out for that. And then whenever I could get my hands on the remote and watch TV, it was always trying to find when the WWE was on. And then obviously the more you watch as a youngster, the whole world opens up to you, all these characters, the bright lights, the pyro, the action, the larger than life characters. It was just all encompassing, and it just drew me in straight away. And I can't say what it was necessarily. I think it's a combination of all those things. I think as a young lad, just seeing this spectacle, which is what it is, the WWE, or the production values and everything, was just very, very enticing to me. So I'd always check it out, and it didn't take long for me to start to realize the characters. So that was my first vivid memory of wrestling. What got me hooked? I can't tell you an initial thing that I watched that I was like, that's why I got hooked. Like I said, I think I was just real fascinated by it all. And just wanted to keep watching, and then just the fascination and the interest just grew from there into a bit of an obsession, and it just grew on and on to the point that I am now here as an independent professional wrestler in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned Boogeyman, I was thinking, oh no, he's not gonna say like the whole like licking the warts off Gillian Hall's face sort of thing.
Do you remember that? Yeah, she had the thing on her face. God, yeah, take me back now.
Just show a little video in the corner like what happened. Like this is what happened.
Yeah, I mean there was some strange strange stuff on WWE TV over the years, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
But like I say, even something like that as a youngster is so wacky and weird and out there. It kind of just entices you in. And then
Exactly. Yeah.
I think maybe then as you grow up, you stay for the in-ring product. But yeah, wacky stuff for sure.
So moving on from the childhood, I guess, because that's how most people sort of their first memory of wrestling. We go into when you started training to be a pro wrestler. So what made you essentially make that decision to want to be an actual pro wrestler? Because obviously there's a whole difference between being a fan and actually getting in the ring.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
what made
absolutely.
you?
Yeah, no. So I, much like everyone else, while I was watching all this WWE on the TV when I'm younger, I'm wrestling my brother in the lounge, out in the garden, on the trampoline. I'm wrestling teddy bears upstairs. I just was trying to reenact what I'd see on the TV. I couldn't watch more than like 20 minutes of like a show without like trying to reenact it or something. So I guess they were the early signs to say that this was something I had to do. And a funny story that seems relevant if you're going through the ages or going through the years, like you say. When I was about 11 years old, me and my brother, we put on our own backyard wrestling show. I come from originally a small village in West Dorset. Everyone knows everyone, and we spent a whole summer choreographing 3 matches, 3 different characters. We had the costumes, we had the gimmicks, we had the entrance music. Most of them rip off WWE themes, and we put together this whole show, start to finish. We had an opening match. The second match was a first blood match where we used we didn't gig. We we got the old ketchup gimmick. So ridiculous. And then the main event was this big Extreme Rules match where like the big high spot of the show was me doing a swanton bomb off of my hedge. Supposedly onto my brother, he moved. I land on the mattress. Crazy stuff, but just an 11-year-old kid that was obsessed with pro wrestling and wanted to do it. But hey, look, we drew an all right house. I think we had about 50 people there. We charged 50p a ticket. Kids come free. So we were hustling from the off. But yeah, I find that always funny looking back. Had the little poster up in our village notice board. And yeah, we were quite surprised by everyone coming. And I'm sure they had a good laugh and giggle at it. But yeah, that was... I think it was around that time that even just a small experience like that, performing in front of people, doing this thing that I love, I was like, wow, I'd love to do this. Another vivid memory I have was being in like a careers class when I was 13 years old and sort of saying, what do you want to do when you're older? And everyone's choosing their different things. And I remember thinking in my head, it's the first time I really thought about like leaving education. What do I want to do? And the only thing that seemed to pop in my head was being a pro wrestler. I wish it was that easy. I wish you could just leave education and be a full-time pro wrestler, but there's a lot of grafting to do to get to that point.
Yeah.
But that was the first vivid memory I have of being like, this is actually something I want to do. Fast forward 3 years, 3-4 years. I was also towards the end of my schooling, and yeah, I think I was in year 11, so the last year of school, and I'm thinking about the next steps, and you start thinking about life a little bit more and what's next. And once again, the only thing that kept coming up was pro wrestling. Pro wrestling. It was the only thing that really excited me and motivated me to kind of want to do. So I was like, well, I need to train. I can't just keep watching it and fantasizing, dreaming about it. So I started looking for schools. I remember another vivid memory was being in some sort of lesson. I couldn't tell you what lesson it is because I spent the whole lesson on maybe like an ICT lesson or something, but I spent the whole lesson not doing my work, but researching schools in Britain where I could train to be a wrestler. And I'm looking at them and I'm shortlisting the ones that are like closest to me. And like I said, I come from a small village in West Dorset, so it's right out in the sticks. There's not much around, so it's real tricky to find somewhere close by. But eventually I stumbled across a school. It was the first place I trained, Evolution Wrestling in Gloucester, or Pro Evolution Wrestling as they were at the time. And Gloucester's not close. It's at least a 2-hour drive up the motorway for me. I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid at the time when I eventually went on to start my training. So yeah, that was kind of the steps to start the training. I sort of found that school, and it was about waiting for the right time. Very thankful for my parents initially, sort of supporting my dream, and they always saw how passionate I was growing up, and if they're amazing parents, and thought, yeah, we'll try and facilitate this as much as we can while you're still under 18. So yeah, that was kind of the next step into starting training.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I mean that's good to hear actually, because you hear a lot of stories about people who, when they were younger, like trying to get into wrestling, they were sort of like their parents were sort of not against it, but they didn't approve of it, or they tried to talk them out of it, or something like that. But like it's good to hear your family actually supported you, like in the process of going to these training shows, or looking at the companies that you were looking at. Um,
Mm,
so that brings me on actually to my next thing, which was like going about into your training.
mm,
So how long were you training before you had your first official match?
mm. Good question. And I feel like this varies a lot depending who you speak to, right? Um, I'd always heard, in interviews and older wrestlers, they say, you shouldn't be anywhere near a ring for the first 3 years or whatever, or you shouldn't even be in a ring taking a bump for the first few years, like learn the basics and all this stuff. Um, I took my first bump was the first thing I ever did at training school. I went in there. Liam Jones, I think he wrestles as now, or he was Kid Candy at the time, the
Mm-hmm.
promoter's son. He was kind of taking the training session. It was very sporadic trainers where I first trained. There wasn't like a set trainer or a course or anything. It was quite sort of, I say, sporadic training, not much structure. But I didn't care because I was in this training facility that had 3 rings, I think, which was a great facility they had at the time. I think they've moved on now, but still, yeah, great big warehouse, weights equipment, matted area, and I was like, this is awesome. I mean, it stinks, it's cold, it's dusty, much like most training facilities, but it was the coolest thing to me. And yeah, like I say, the first thing I did was get taught how to bump, and I think I picked it up quite quickly. Learned my back bump, my front bump, my flip bump, how to lock up, how to take a head, all of that sort of stuff. Um, Started training properly in January 2015, believe it or not, which is pretty crazy. And had
Yeah.
my first match in March 2015. Um, that first few years of training until about the start of 2018, really. There's about 3 years there. I'm training at most twice a month. Um, so it wasn't all in straight away, mostly because, like I say, I lived so far away. I relied on my parents driving me up. They
Mm-hmm.
had this kind of system. My mum would drive me one week. I'd have a week off. My dad would drive the next week. So they're doing the journey once, 4-hour round trip. And like I say, I'm grateful they even got me started to sort of slowly go away, chip away at the dream. But yeah, 3 months really, about three and a bit months to my first match. And I remember it quite distinctly. It was me versus someone called Adam Stamps, who was a trainer at the time,
Mm-hmm.
a trainee, sorry.
Oh.
Don't think he still wrestles anymore. I don't know if you've seen the match or whether there's any remnants of it out there. I remember he was wearing his trainee shirt, some like MMA shorts, and his Lonsdale shooters. But I wanted to make sure I had nice gear. Someone I've always liked in wrestling is kind of the flashy gear. So I got some sort of generic custom like white and red tights. They're real flashy though. I mean, I'd go out there to say it was one of the nicest gears on the show. It was a trainee show, but like it was fresh, it was white, it stood out.
Mm-hmm.
Had my like low key knockoff kick pads. And I remember thinking the match was really good. I think that was just because I was so excited to be in there, and like just the thrill of like being in front of an audience in an actual ring was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is footage of the match. I think one of my parents filmed it, and yeah, I've watched it back since, and it is awful. That's the first match. It's to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Logan Paul. I haven't been training under Shawn Michaels and wrestling at WrestleMania or whatever it was for my first match. Yeah, that was the first match early on. And then, like I said, those first few years of training were maybe training twice a month. So you're talking maybe at most 25 sessions a year, but I probably had to miss the odd one here and there. So we're averaging about 20 training sessions for the first 3 years. So it was a real sort of slow start, maybe 2 shows a year on trainee shows. And these are matches that, a lot of preparations put into them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was like a nice soft easing into pro wrestling.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair enough. And that was with Pro Evo Wrestling, you said?
Yeah, I believe they just go as Evolution or Evolution Wrestling now, but at the
Yeah,
time it was Pro Evolution Wrestling and Pro Evo.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Going through
stuff.
your Instagram and whatnot, you can see like the entrance way, and then like behind you is like the Pro Evo W. Or something.
Yeah, right, yeah, classic. Yeah.
But that brings me on to afterwards. I believe you went on to LDN wrestling.
Yes. Yeah, that was probably the next place I went to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Uh, yeah. So I'm not entirely sure when this started because it's kind of hard to distinguish when things happen because obviously there's that backdated posts and there's other posts that you put on like memories or you're like whatever. So there's a few posts actually of your initial persona, or at least one of the starting personas. Jonathan Edward Gale.
yes, that's right. Yeah.
So you got the slick back hair, you got the sweater wrapped around your shoulders and neck.
Yeah.
I assume I've not seen any footage, unfortunately, but I'm assuming that's a very cocky, arrogant sort of person.
Yeah, probably for the best you haven't seen any footage of that. I'm gonna have to take this time to shout out my good pal, made of Cuddly and Judd. He's a big Jonathan Edward Gale fan. I don't know if he'll watch this interview, but it's a little shout out for you. But yeah, so essentially going on from where we left off, I guess a few trainee shows here and there. They put me on a couple of their main shows in sort of sporadic bouts, but I just wasn't getting the work I needed. Still young, I know I had loads of time, but I was eager and I wanted to work as much as possible. And I knew that the only way to get better at wrestling was to wrestle different people, different places, different crowds. I knew nothing about wrestling, but that was obvious to me. And I just wasn't getting those opportunities there, so I started to branch out and look for stuff. And it's real hard. It's real hard when you're starting out, especially when you're a young, skinny teenager trying to get bookings, and you don't. It's hard. It's really hard to get promoters to take a chance on you. And you're probably not very good at that time, but you only get better by getting matches. So it's this kind of catch-22 when you're starting out, which can be a bit difficult.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I just stumbled across LDM wrestling and dropped them a message. Said, look, I just want to work. So they ran a lot of shows and they brought me in and started using me. I worked there for about a year. And if things ended a little bit sourly there, we don't need to get into it. But the time for us to work together came to an end, which is absolutely fine. But for the time I spent there for that year or so, I got a lot of reps in, and getting in front of a crowd and lots of different crowds, different parts of the country. They were running shows up and down the UK, so it was great to just get out and travel and get in front of fans, and wrestle a few different people. And they brought over some good names. They had Flip Gordon over for a tour or two. They had MJF over before he kind of was about to sort of, I think he may be CZW champion or something at the time, but he was kind of just about to blow up. So they got some pretty decent names over, which was a great experience to work. And I started off, my first wrestling name was Johnny Gale. That was the first name. That's all it was. It was the name of a wrestler.
Yeah.
And after a year or so of that, I was like, I need something. I need something a bit more. Just need a bit more to me. I want to try something out. And I had this idea that Johnny Gale suddenly was going to turn heel and reveal that actually his real name's Jonathan Gale, and he's been lying about who he is all this time. That he's actually a privately educated schoolboy that has tried to hide his true identity to please the rabble of the wrestling folk. And you got it down. He's was a snooty kind of posh character that looked down, real hokey stuff. But there's certain crowds, certain shows where they eat it up, and it got some great reactions. And he had his little run, and I had some fun doing it. Got me a little bit of reps in working as a heel. Still, I look back at some of that footage, and it's the try not to curse, but it was it wasn't good stuff. But it's all a learning curve. I started doing that. Somehow Edward got thrown in. I think it might have been the promoter that decided he wanted that in there as well. He thought it was even more outrageous. But we did the whole shtick with the jumper. I came out. This costs so much. Just real cheap stuff. But there's a certain audience where they lap it up and it gets them into it, and they want to see him get his ass kicked. And it did the job it was meant to do. And I did have a lot of fun doing it. But once again, it had a shelf life, and after 6 months to a year of doing that sort of stuff, I also realised this isn't it long term. This isn't really the wrestler I want to be. But yeah, fun time doing that.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll actually answer one question anyway. I was going to ask what inspired the change the breakaway from that portrayal
Mm.
to essentially what you are now, which is like, you know, this plucky, full of fire, sort of like this fighter who doesn't give up, literally heart and soul. And it says, you know, like, I was always going to ask what sort of inspired that, but you sort of answered that anyway. So,
Mm. Yeah, well,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So that moves me on then to, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 2018, when you officially joined with Revolution Pro Wrestling as part of the Contender division.
2019.
2019, my bad. Okay. But yeah, so you joined up with them. How was getting into that essentially? Because Rev Pro are arguably one of the, if not the biggest British wrestling company.
Mm.
So how was it
I'd ask.
sort of, yeah, go on,
Mm.
getting accepted by them into their ranks, and to, you know, mix it up with all the, you know, varying names that you come across?
Yeah, I mean, you say in my opinion, and sure, I still haven't worked in a lot of the other European companies, so it might be a bit biased, but I think RevPro is the best company in Europe. Um, I think they put on the best wrestling. I think they've produced a lot of homegrown stars. They've put on some amazing matches. Brilliant storytelling. Yeah, I just think personally, I think it's where most people on the scene want to be, and then when they want to cut their teeth or make a name for themselves. Um, and I knew that, and I was at a point where I had a bit of experience doing stuff. I was used to being in front of crowds, but I just knew I needed to get that next level. And like I say, the Rev Pros of the scene, that's where I'm aiming to be. So why not just jump in straight away? And I started training at the Portsmouth School of Wrestling, which is kind of a feeder system for Revolution Pro.
Yeah.
Um, coincided with me studying at university closer to the area, which was, to be honest, the reason I chose to study in Southampton, which is where I'm based now and where I've been for the last few years, was to be closer to train at the Portsmouth School of Wrestling, with the idea to impress and get a chance with Rev Pro and rise up the ranks, which we're still plucking away at. So yeah, that's kind of how it all came about. There was a period where I'd stopped wrestling some of the promotions I was, and I kind of had a bit of a moment where I didn't want to be Jonathan Edward Gale. I didn't want to be doing that. I wanted more, and I wanted to be better. And it kind of was a case of stripping everything back, almost going back to part time. I would kind of look at my very short wrestling journey so far in two parts. There's that kind of early stage
Mm-hmm.
that we've kind of talked about, and now this is almost like, it was kind of like a hard reset. And I
Yeah.
feel like this, from late 2018, early 2019 to now, was when I learned to be a pro wrestler. Um, I got some great training at the Portsmouth School of Wrestling, and just being around that and around Rev Pro and seeing how they do stuff, and even going to their shows before I was wrestling on them, and just seeing the quality of action. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to be doing. This is the level I want to get to. So just being surrounded like that was really good. So yeah, it was 2019, if my memory serves me correctly, that I joined the Contenders division. And originally they'd announced it, and I wasn't one of the names. I believe Brendan White, Sean Jackson, Kenneth Halfpenny, I think Danny Duggan might have been announced at like the first, as one of the contenders, although I'm not sure that ever materialised. And then also Gabe Kidd. I think they were like the 5 contenders that were announced at one of the cockpit shows. So I wasn't, and that was a bit of a blow, because I was really hoping to sort of get into that division. Whatever happened, about a month or so later, and there was talk about putting me in the division. I had what I felt was like a tryout match in Southampton in summer 2019. I think, yeah, some point in summer 2019, maybe early summer, June, something like that. I wrestled Sean Jackson, and I think we had a pretty good match. And that was kind of, I think that just kind of gave them the nod that, yeah, we think you'd be a good fit for the Contenders division. And then the next match, which was kind of my, I think at the time it was really early on in them running Southampton, and they were kind of had their own fan base. I don't think the show went on demand for whatever reason, probably some sort of technical issue. Hopefully not my match, but it didn't go up. So like, it was almost like a dark match. It felt like it didn't feel like it was publicized, or really word really got around. So like, I think the first time a lot of Rev Pro fans saw me was in the August. I think it was the August, might have been July cockpit. which was their kind of at the time their monthly event. It's now at the 229, but they're like their London show that they run at the first weekend every month. And it's when Hikaleo's down, and he was on excursion with us for a little bit, and he'd ripped through a lot of guys. He's in the ring. He's demanding to wrestle someone. I think the challenge was thrown out to the fans. He's like, which one of you guys wants to get in here with me? And it's the first time I've been put out ringside in the Contenders gear, the sort of the young boy style with the black Contender shirt and everything. Mm-hmm. And we did this whole angle where I walk forward. I'm like, yeah, I'll fight you. And no one there knew who I was. They hadn't seen me ringside. They hadn't seen me at all, really. I think I was just out of the blue. And then I get in there and we do this impromptu match, only 5 minutes or so, and I got squashed. But I think I had one little flurry in there, and I knew I had this one flurry and I had to make the most out of it. So I just came out with a load of fire. And it's kind of has a special place when I look back on it. Although it wasn't this long, massive, drawn-out match with a crazy back end or anything, it was. It felt like that was my introduction to Rev Pro, and almost like a re-debut. Like I said, this felt like now I'm on the trajectory that I want to be. And this is the place to start it. And getting in there with someone like Kaleo was a real cool dude. And I think we had a real good night. So that was kind of the beginning of the Contenders division.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. During that segment, during that little the start when you fought off with Hikaleo, you appeared in white trainers.
Yeah. Yes, I forgot about this as well. That's great. Yeah.
So yeah, the nickname, from what I can tell, that was penned for you at the time was White Shoes.
Yeah. And I ran with it because I wasn't just Contender guy. I wasn't just another contender to get jobbed out. I was White Shoes. To me, it was something. They remembered me by something. You know, the other contenders were just contenders. I mean, they probably weren't. They probably wrestled and they did them by name. But instead of just being another dude, some trainee or something, I was White Shoes. To me, I was like, yeah, I'll roll with that. For the next 6 months, every time I was on Contenders duty at ringside, I made sure I wore my White Shoes. I even wanted, because the strict idea of the Contenders stuff is to kind of copy the Young Lions. Wear all black. I wanted to do the black trunks, black knee pads, but wear white boots because I'm White Shoes, right? I didn't follow through with that in the end, but yeah, I got a White Shoes chant that match, and that was. I'd forgotten about that, so thanks for reminding me.
That's all right. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm not sure if I should mention this or not. I don't know how if they remember it good or bad. Like,
no, it's a fond little memory.
That's good. Also, there was an interview that was posted on Rev Pro's website back in, what was it, the start of 2020, where they were talking to you, and you mentioned before that you one of your aspirations was to wrestle in York Hall. I don't know if you've done that as of yet. I can't fully recall, but is that something that you've done? And if so, how was that? If you haven't, are you got any plans to wrestle in York Hall, really? Because I imagine there's definitely a chance with the Rev Pro Rumble coming up as well.
So yeah, I 100% since I joined Rev Pro in the Contenders division, I wanted to wrestle at York Hall. It's a beautiful venue. It's housed some of the best British wrestling ever, way back in the FWA days, and then the last 2 years with Rev Pro, they put on some classics there. And I'd be at, since Contender, I'd be at every York Hall, ringside for the first few, just watching this world class wrestling. You know, Tanahashi, Okada, Suzuki, Will Ospreay, Pac, like just seeing them so close and being like, these are the best in the fucking world. And I'm just getting to watch and study them here at ringside. This is brilliant. But obviously, there's a part of me that's like, I've got to get in there and I've got to have my York Hall moment, I keep calling it, because I've seen so many great moments there and I just want to get in that ring and perform. And no, I haven't yet, believe it or not.
Yeah.
The only contender to not wrestle at York Hall, which kind of sucked, I can't lie. And I felt ready. At the time, and I would have jumped at the opportunity, but I feel beyond ready now. And it was actually last month live in London at the 229 that I declared that I'm going to be in the Revolution Rumble. Official announcement has not been made, but I declared myself for the Rumble, so don't know if I'm supposed to be saying this, but as far as I'm aware, I'm going to be in that Revolution Rumble, and that'll be my York Hall debut. So I've been waiting
Nice.
a long time for this, a long time, like you say, since 2019. So that's a long time to be raring to go. So as soon as I get in there, I'm going to make the most of it. And it's the first of many. Trust me. I wholly believe that a year or two's time, I'm going to be in one of those big marquee matches at York Hall and making some real special moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like, there's obviously everyone deserves a chance, but the fact that your chance has sort of been, dare I say, it's sort of like the moment when it should have happened is come and gone.
Mm.
But the chance that you have now is amazing because you've also you've gone past the contenders division. Like you've graduated from that into basically your own person now, and like you've got your own personality. You've got your own. You're not limited to the the contender sort of black trunk young lion sort of style as well. So it's quite amazing actually because even though it puts you in a unique position, basically is what I'm saying. Because as you say, you were the only contender to of that class anyway to not wrestle in York Hall at the time. Uh, and now you've got the chance, well, potentially, to have that chance at Rev Pro Rumble. Should they announce it? I don't know. They might announce it. Who knows?
As far as I'm aware, it's happening, but I don't think the official has gone out. So I'm backtracking on that just so I don't get in trouble. But hey,
Yeah.
even if they don't put me in it, I'm just going to run down that ramp and get in there anyway. Like you said, it's about time. I'm ready to make an impact in York Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so going on from there, we sort of hit a bit of a halt, um, bit of a downer at this point, but it's something that I have to ask because it was, it was a global event. So the pandemic of 2020, obviously it affected everyone in a lot of different ways, be it health, work, however it was. If you're comfortable with it, can you share how it affected you and your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it sucked, man. Like you say, for a lot of reasons. Um, and I've said several times, it's an awful thing, the pandemic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people had a really tough time. I genuinely feel quite grateful for where I was in my life, not even wrestling, just where I was in life. I feel like if it was going to happen, that's probably the best time it could have happened, for various reasons that I don't necessarily need to get into.
Yeah.
However, it still sucked. I'm not going to say it was good or fun. And it really did suck because I was. This is the crazy thing about me as a contender. I was late to the group, so I joined in what I think it was August 2019 was that Hikuleo match. September, October, November, December, January, February, March. We're talking 7-8 months into being a contender, and that's when the world shut down. The last weekend of Rev Pro shows, we were up in St Neots and Sheffield. I wrestled Hikuleo in Sheffield. Didn't get the win, but we had a great match that I really enjoyed. And then the next day in St Neots, I beat a couple other contenders in a triple threat match, and I was just ready to go. Like I'd mentally reached this point where I was about to end my studies at university within the next couple months, and was ready to just put everything I had into wrestling. And just I wanted to just wrestle every weekend and train as much as I could and just go and hit the ground running. I was so motivated and ready for it. And I feel like I was gaining steam in the contenders division, and then the world shut down. And I remember the following weekend from that weekend I've just mentioned, there was a trainee show for the Portsmouth School of Wrestling. I actually wrestled Will Caven, who suddenly exploded onto the scene in the last month or so in Rev Pro.
Yeah.
And I remember being at that show and speaking to Andy Quilden, the promoter of Rev Pro, and him sort of saying this coronavirus stuff's looking pretty bad, actually. We might have to cancel our show next weekend. Or I think York Hall was coming up in a couple of weeks. He was like, yeah, I'm not sure. It might be like reduced capacity. I'm not really sure it's going to go. 2 days later, I think we're all like a week later, we're all in lockdown, and they're putting out statements saying, indie wrestling's done. Like, and no one knew. None of us knew how long this was going to last. But it was real devastating for independent wrestling worldwide, but especially here in Britain, just because it just stopped for what, like 2 years.
Yeah.
and you build up this momentum as a indie wrestler, and it just gets stopped, and then all your work gets stopped, and your growth stops. Selling merchandise and income stops. Like, it's really, really rubbish time. So yeah, it was a bit rubbish, but at the same time, there is a silver lining. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't have wrestled Will Ospreay. I don't think. Maybe I would have, but that was the awesome thing about RevPro. I don't think the empty arena shows were a moneymaker for RevPro. Don't quote me on it. I think a large part of the fact that the empty arena shows were put on were for the fans to be able to see some of their favorite independent wrestlers again, and to give the boys a chance to get in there and work again and get in a ring. It's not the same. It's nowhere near the same as having a live audience. Everything hurt a lot more. Some of those tapings were done in like October, and it was so freaking cold. Like, we're in the ring and you can see your breath coming out of you, and I'm wrestling Chris Ridgway getting chopped and kicked the shit out of. It was not fun. But we're wrestling and we're getting reps in. And like I said, I wrestled the best wrestler in the world, Will Ospreay, as a contender. And that kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't realize until the day I turned up for the taping that match was happening. So that was pretty wild. So there are silver linings. There are silver linings to it. But yeah, overall, obviously a bit rubbish. But I remember that first show back. All the boys were real excited just to hear the fans. I remember going out the curtain and just being like, wow, you just hear that response. And you I don't say you get used to it always, but when you haven't had it for so long, it was real good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there as well with the Epic Encounter series that the RevPro did during the later stages of the lockdown. In regards to just seeing all your favorites as a fan, that is, seeing all your favorites compete, even in an empty ring. It's still wrestling to a fan, and it's still getting to watch that product that you very much enjoy. It just is in a different capacity. And obviously, as you say, as a wrestler myself as well, like getting a chance to just, like get rid of that ring rust that you had from the being, stuck indoors. It's always good to get that out of the system and get yourself up and ready to go for when crowds can come back in. So moving on swiftly from the Cravers, get a bit of an up track here. So obviously all that ended. The lockdown, that is, anyway. I believe it was 2021 that it ended and shows started coming back in. So obviously more Rev Pro stuff. But we moved a bit more forward to becoming a man of international travel and wrestling across the border. So from what I can see, anyway, and there might be more than just this, but you wrestled for a company in Italy called Dream.
That's right, yeah.
And as we're recording, there's one coming up as well for a company called SAJ, which is a bit of an odd, in my opinion, a bit of an odd title for a company, but
you're not the only one who thinks that.
So for those who don't know, SAJ stands for Squash a Jobber, which is it's sort of like how you would associate American 80s wrestling or 90s wrestling, I suppose, but it's a bit of an odd title, modern day wrestling, but it is what it is. How is it to essentially go abroad to wrestle abroad for foreign audiences?
Yeah, really, really cool. It's always something getting into wrestling that you think would be great one day to go abroad, to be paid to go to another country to wrestle, to wrestle in front of a different fan base, to wrestle, a different pool of guys as well. So yeah, I was really excited to do that. Early on, I went over to America. Well, in like my first year or so, it was a little bit different, that trip. And I still didn't have a clue what I was doing. There was a brief trip to Germany around the time I was a contender as well. But then I just think about where I am now, and I just feel like I'm a completely different wrestler, and I feel like I get so much more out of these trips. I feel like I'm in a place to pick up so much more and learn so much more from being in front of the different crowds and wrestling different kind of guys and being in different positions.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's real cool to go out February last year for Dream. I don't think they've ran a show since. I think they ran a show out in Japan actually a few months ago. But yeah, I went out there for Dream Wrestling. That was real cool. It was in a scramble match, which was pretty wicked. The fans were there was you never know when you go somewhere else. You know what the Repro fans are going to be, or there's a good chance you know what most sort of British indie fans are going to be like. But going to a different country for the first time, especially with Dream, that was the first time they'd ran a show.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, from what I was told, is a lot of the wrestling's in the north in Italy. There's not too much in the south, which was why the promoter wanted to put on a show there. So I didn't know, are you going to get people that don't know what wrestling is, that they just turn up and see a wrestling poster and think, we'll check that out? Are they like wrestling fans that are like, yes, we finally got wrestling here? Or is it going to be a bit of a mix? But they were well up for it, and they're really hot, and it was really fun. And they're doing all the chants in English and their Italian accent, which threw me off the first time I heard that. But yeah, no, it's real fun. And then say back out again last October with SHA, and yeah, got some exciting things coming up this year as well. Yeah, so it's good fun. I do like getting across seas. Hopefully, yeah, some exciting stuff to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you say, it's a chance to pick up different traits and talents from other competitors who don't necessarily see in the UK as well. So it's always exciting to learn new things, and you're never too old to learn something new. That is something I've always stuck by. That no matter how old you are, you can always learn something from someone.
You're right, and that's even more so in wrestling. Like you hear everyone always say it, but it's so true. You never stop learning. Like you can't just win at wrestling. You can't just have it down. Like you can always get better. You can always learn something else. And I think that's one of the things that's so addictive about it. After every match, it's just like, but I could have done this, or this could have been done like this, and it's just this constant pursuit to just, I don't know, I guess a pursuit for perfection, but you're never going to reach it. So it's just chasing the dragon, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that.
So is that something that you not often, but is that something that you do or used to do? So after you had a match with someone, be it another contender or be it someone who's not a contender, do you go to them and ask them for notes, or like do you ask them to like backstage to watch your match and just like make notes of what you've done and how you can improve or what you did well? Is that something that you do, or is that something that you don't really do much of?
So you're quite, as a wrestler, you're quite in tune with how it goes. You'll have a definite feeling afterwards and how you think it went, whether that be good, bad. I find I've never been happy 100% after a match, and I don't ever want to be, because I feel like that's complacent. There's always things I think I could have done that, but even some of the matches that's been some of my favourites, I've got back and thought, God, I've been on a bit of a high and be like, that was sick. I really enjoyed that. Once that's kind of buzz has worn off for a little bit, or even initially, sometimes I'm like, yeah, but I wish I did. And it's the tiniest little things sometimes, but like, talk about keeping those things tight, and like it's the little things. That's what make great wrestlers. It's the little things, the in betweens, and yeah, that's the part I'm at in my wrestling at the moment in the last year or so. Just nailing those things down, and just yeah. I'll it's kind of it kind of sucks, because you'll be happy, and then maybe you'll watch a match back and you'll be like, oh, but this, but that. But I think being your own biggest critic, I think, is the way to be successful, because that's how you grow, you develop, and you keep figuring out things that you can do better. So yeah, you'll always know how it is. And I mean, when you're in a RevPro locker room and you've got someone like Will Ospreay backstage, if he's able to watch your match and give you feedback, like, you're taking advantage of that. If he's able to do it, and some of the other guys, just get those pearls of wisdom. This was good, maybe this wasn't. Have you thought about doing things like this? So yeah, as much as possible. Like, I feel like that's what the independent wrestling scene is all about. It's about growing and developing as a scene.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's what I thought the answer would be. But you never know with people. Some people, they think they are happy with what they do and don't really need to ask for help. But but it's good to see that that people like yourself are just willing to put aside their pride and be like, hey, you know what? If you can, do you mind looking at this and just let me know what you think? So it's always good to learn that way as well. So that moves me on to the questions that we have from Twitter and or Insta.
Mm.
So got a couple of questions and a comment rather than a question, but is what it is. So we have here. Where's it gone? Here we go. So this is a usual question that we get for our guests. Uh, who would play you in a film of your life?
Mm. Good question. Real good question. Um, mm.
And obviously, you can't say yourself.
Yeah, well, that was yeah. That's my cheat answer. I'd love to. Yeah, if a film was ever to be made about me, I'd love to be able to play myself. I've got a bit of a background in acting, so I'd love to be able to portray that. But
Mhm.
that is a cop out answer. Um, my partner always says, she always says that the name's drawn a blank. She always says that this she can imagine this person playing me, but I completely forgot the name, so that's no use saying that. Who would I choose? Hmm. God, you've really stumped me on this. I feel like it's a big, it's a big decision to make, isn't it?
Exactly, because
Um,
for all we know, like future filmmakers have been seeing this interview and be like, you know what,
yeah,
JJ Gale here, he said he wants this guy to play him. You know, we got to get this guy.
I'm gonna have to go away from this one and let you know. Maybe like when this podcast gets released, it can be a little note on that. So I don't want to rush into it and regret my choice.
Mhm.
So I feel like yeah. I'll get back to you on that one. I know it's a cop out, but for now, my cop out answer will be JJ Gale, starring as JJ Gale.
Fair enough.
Unless you've got a
Um,
suggestion.
I haven't got an answer myself. I don't really follow the film industry that much, so I'm not entirely sure who actors are and what they look like. Essentially, like I know a couple of people like from my childhood and all that, but I don't really know anyone one day.
Got you.
Um, so we move on to another question, which is something that I normally ask, but because it was asked here, I skipped over it in the course of the interview. So outside of wrestling, what else do you do? So in regards to your hobbies and interests, really.
Mm. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, wrestling's quite all encompassing when you're trying
Mhm.
to get places with it, and I guess a byproduct of being a wrestler is training, right? I love training in the gym. Something I started doing because of wrestling, and now it's just a lifestyle. I can't imagine not training, and
Yeah.
I hate it if I get an injury or something, and I know it's probably good for me to take time out and not train. Recently, I've been nursing a bit of an elbow injury, and I just can't keep out of the gym. It's great for physical health, my mental health. It just kind of keeps me ticking over. So yeah, I love going to the gym and training. I like I mentioned just then, I do a bit of acting as well, a little bit of acting work here and there. Hobbies and interests, man. I feel like that just takes up all my time. Your weekends are filled like wrestling. You're training during the week.
Hmm.
What else do I like to do? Um, I like it's a bit boring, I guess, but I've always been like an outside kind of guy. I wasn't a gamer. Like I guess that probably a lot of people's answers is like gaming. I've never really been into gaming. Probably because I suck. Every time growing up, I try and play even something like SmackDown vs Raw, which I should have been good at because I was this wrestling obsessed kid. I sucked at it. So yeah, I always kind of lean towards being outside as a kid and now growing up, sort of getting out in nature, I was going to the beach or
Yeah.
just getting outside. I'm definitely an outside kind of guy. Any physical sort of activities and stuff like that. I recently went to a gymnastics gym actually with a friend of mine who's kind of like a parkour guy, and I really enjoyed that. It's not something I've done before, but it's definitely something I'm going to go back to.
Mm.
And I feel like that's only going to help my in-ring wrestling as well. So
Yeah.
there are a few things there. Yeah.
Fair enough. Um, Sort of following on from that as well. Do you like during the limited downtime that you do get, you go to the gym, you said, and you like to go out more. You go out like throughout nature, go to the beach, however it is. Do you have a certain kind of music that you listen to as you're doing it? Like, is there a favorite genre you have, favorite artist?
Yeah. Funnily enough, going to a gig tomorrow. So it's
Ah,
funny you bring it up. London gig tomorrow. So it's a day off from wrestling, and I'm going to enjoy that. But yeah, really, really eclectic music taste. It depends on the vibe, depends how I'm feeling. Big fan of reggae music. I remember saying this to Will Ospreay once at a seminar a couple of years back,
yeah.
and I think I didn't get the most favourable response. But yeah, I'm into my reggae, my hip hop, sort of indie rock, I guess. You know, if it's the right time and place, a bit drum and bass and jungle. You know, sometimes just a nice bit of acoustic music I'm into. And just other sorts of nice sort of alternative stuff. Some real. I mean, if I ever have my phone just on shuffle,
Yeah.
it jumps around everywhere. So yeah, really eclectic. But I think music's great, man. It's just healthy for the soul, man. It just keeps you ticking over. It's not one of those things. I think if you can listen to a bit of music every day, it's only going to help your well-being. So
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely music. I guess it's not a hobby, but yeah, I really enjoy my music.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, like I said, it follows on from that, but it's not entirely is that. It's just something that I feel that 99% of people do. So they listen to it in some variety. So it's just always quite interesting to hear people's tastes in that as well.
On that, I heard saw like a clip on social media or something the other day of Rob Van Dam in an interview, right? RVD, and he said he doesn't listen to music like, at all.
Oh wow.
Like doesn't music, which I just found mad. Like I can't imagine not listening to music at all. And anyway, he's like, no, like I don't have favorite artists. I just don't listen to music.
Oh.
Which I think it's quite rare. So yeah.
Yeah, that is quite rare. Didn't know he had like arguably one of the best themes in
Yeah.
WWE at the time as well.
Yeah.
Also depends on your taste, but to me that was one of the best themes at the time.
Yeah.
So we move on to the final question, which is not actually a question, it's more a comment uh, from at Dummy Thick Robot, um, who says, "No question, just tell him to keep the moustache."
Ah, Andy Quilden, do you hear that? Keep the mustache. Been polarizing. It's only come out in the new year. As we speak, 2 months into the new year, it's been a polarizing choice, but I respect it. The mustache will stay.
There you go, Robot. Just because you said so.
Yeah, there it is.
So with those done, that brings on to the final question that I normally ask people, which is it's one of two questions actually. It's who is your currently active and all-time dream wrestler to face in a match? So all-time can encompass people who passed away and people who are retired. So it'd be like in their prime, essentially.
That's really hard to narrow down. That's really hard to narrow down. So I guess there's like, so as I mentioned earlier, I wrestled Will Ospreay on the empty arena tapings, but it's another match I really want to have again now. Now I've grown and developed as a wrestler.
Yeah.
He's currently thrown out the open invite to British wrestling, Step Up, and that hasn't fallen on deaf ears. But I'm biding my time. I'm waiting to the right moment to sort of throw out that challenge or have that opportunity. And I do feel that's a match that I can have in the next year or so. I really believe that. So that's one of them. I guess that's in the realm at the moment in the realm of possibility. Another one that kind of seems in the realm of possibility, although with his Impact commitments, maybe not so much these days. But Speedball Mike Bailey is another person I'd love to get in there with.
Yeah.
Pac as well is someone big inspiration to me. I think he's incredible. So there, yeah. But then like further afield, people that have passed on or stuff, or that are way off elsewhere doing things. Rey Mysterio, I genuinely think he's the GOAT, man. Like seeing what he was doing, you know, way back when, and what he's still doing now, like to such a high ability, like the dude's crazy, man. Like he plays that underdog role so well. He innovated wrestling with his his style. That'd be a dream match. Yeah, man. I mean, there's so many. I mean, growing up, guys like Edge and Chris Jericho were guys. They were like my guys. Like growing up, watching wrestling, so they'd be like dream matches. And then if you take me back to the start of this interview, that 7-year-old kid watching wrestling, how could I not say John Cena? You know, that was my first guy in wrestling at that age. He was the man, and as a little 7-year-old kid, I was walking around everywhere with my baseball cap on and giving it the "you can't see me." But I could go on for ages, man. I could go on and on.
Yeah, fair enough. So who would be your all-time? Is that Rey Mysterio, like Chris Jericho's, like, or is that
All-time
more?
favorite or like all-time I'd like to wrestle?
Um, Either way, really. I mean, yeah. So sure, just let's do both then. So who's your all-time favorite, and then also who's your all-time dream wrestler to face?
Yeah, man. I guess it's got to be one of those guys. Like they're the first ones that spring to mind.
Yeah.
Like I say, I just think Ray's the goat, man. Like, so I think him. But then I also like think from a different point of view, like Chris Jericho in terms of in ring, but also just like character wise and like keeping himself fresh and interesting, just being such a showman. Mike's recently wrestled him, which is wild, right? In
Yeah.
that crazy 10-man at PWG, and I'm just like, that's crazy, man. I mean, you know. So who knows? Maybe give it a few years. Maybe that would be me in that position. But yeah, then there's kind of guys over in Japan as well. You know, if we're doing all time, something like a Hayabusa, or like a modern day like Okada's just pushing out matches like there's no tomorrow. There he is, actually.
Yeah.
There he is. Like, everybody just realised that. I don't know if that's intentional, but yeah, man. So there's so many. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So actually, no, yeah. One more thing I wanted to ask. Actually, I forgot to ask you earlier because you mentioned it there, and I thought, is it linked? Um, with your in-ring style, obviously from when you started training as well. Is there a certain wrestler or certain wrestlers that you saw growing up that influenced the way you wanted to wrestle?
Yeah, I guess so. I never want to imitate a wrestler and try and be them, but obviously, yeah, there's influences.
Yeah.
Like I say, guys like Pac, guys like Will Ospreay, guys like Rey Mysterio. Then also, like I never wanted to just purely be a flyer. You know, I think there's guys out there can do even more crazy flips than I can do and high flying stuff. So I don't want that to just be part of my game. You know, I love the technical wrestling. Going back and watching some of the old World of Sport, I think that stuff's crazy, and I want to incorporate a little bit of that, sort of the striking stuff. I feel like it's kind of just been a merge of different bits that I've picked up, trying out different bits, seeing what works and what doesn't, and I feel like it's kind of a nice hybrid style. I feel like I'm a quick, evasive wrestler, and someone commented the other day I was like a what do they say? A sling blade, did they say? I think it was like a sling blade in there. I kind of like that idea of just being in there and just ducking, diving, reaching quick strikes and that sort of stuff. That's what I try and portray in the ring.
Yeah.
But also just that, like you say, heart and soul. Like that's it's a moniker, but it's also it's a genuine, authentic feeling for me when I'm in the ring. It's just pour my heart and soul into it. And there's been times where, you know, I've lost and I've taken a beating, but like just that heart and soul is what keeps me going. And I honestly believe that's what drives me on. My passion for doing this and wanting to reach where I want to reach. It's what keeps me going.
Yeah, fair. And I think that's a pretty good note actually to officially put an end to this interview because it's almost 20 to 11.
Ooh,
Yeah, it's later than I thought it was. But yeah, that brings an end to this UK Indie Spotlight. Thank you, JJ, for coming on. Where can the people find you at events coming up?
Yeah, I know this is coming out a couple weeks after we're recording right now.
Yes.
So in a couple of days, I'm going to be in Southampton wrestling for Rev Pro. That would have already happened by the time you guys are listening to this.
Did you win?
And I hope so, man. I'm feeling rejuvenated this year. I keep saying everywhere, 2023 is my year. I keep putting it out there into the world. I'm manifesting it. I really believe this is my year. I've never felt more motivated. Just recently put an end to a tag team with Callum Newman in Revolution Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
It wasn't a split. You know, we haven't fallen out. We're not going to go into a blood feud. We're just going on our own directions for a bit. And I feel like now I'm solely focused on a singles run that big things are going to happen. So yeah, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. If we're watching this and I haven't, then I'm going to have to eat my words, but that's not going to happen. Heart and soul will see me through. But yeah.
It's fine. If you lose, then I'll just send you this on the email and just like
just edit it out.
Just a clip of you saying I'm going to win. Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I also believe I will have just been in Italy for SAJ the day this comes out, maybe a couple of days before. And then coming up in March, yeah, lots of stuff. We've got Rev Pro. We've got your call, we've got the Revolution Rumble at the end of the month. I'm going out to Spain the day before the Revolution Rumble for AWZ Wrestling, which will be my Spanish debut. So looking forward to that.
Nice.
DSF Wrestling. And then yeah, more exciting stuff coming up in April as well. So yeah, just keep tabs on the social medias for any upcoming events at JJGale_PW. I think it's nicely put underneath my my little video here.
It is.
So yeah, keep up tabs for that. All over the socials, YouTube, all that stuff. Yeah, that's where you're gonna find me.
Fantastic. And one more thing I always have to ask as well. Do you have a merch store that people can buy your merch?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. I'm sporting the brand new Storm Through Everyone JG Gale t-shirt. Yeah, it's in the links to any of those socials, jjgale.bigcartel.com. Prints, t-shirts, all that stuff. So yeah, check it out.
All right, fantastic. So as I say, this has been an end to this UK Indy Spotlight wrestler interview. I've been Dan DP. Our socials are up there. Mine's underneath here, and yeah, just keep all the stuff. Subscribe to our YouTube. Follow our socials, our Twitch, our Twitter, Instagram. And do not forget we've got our giveaway coming up soon for No Mercy Wrestling as well. So be sure to check that out when you get a chance. We have a chance to win 2 general admission tickets. The giveaway will be ending in a few days for when this goes out. So be sure to get him a chance to win those tickets. But other than that, I've been Dan. This has been JJ. Thank you once again for coming on.
Thank you, Dan. Pleasure.
Thank you. And that has been a Indy Spotlight. We'll see you guys at the next one. Peace.